Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Startup Operator Podcast. Those of you who've been following the podcast know that I love verticalized marketplaces. And today we have an entrepreneur who is running one such business. We have Pawan of Fashionza on the podcast today. Hey, Pawan, welcome to the Startup Operator Podcast. Thank you so much for making the time.
Oh, thanks a lot for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. So how do you see manufacturing in India specifically progressing going forward? I mean, I think that, we famously leapfrogged and we moved to services,
Yeah.
right? We skipped it. But I think there's a big wave coming and it's being led by startups like yours, right? I mean, as I mentioned, we've had founders of Zetwork, Off Business as well on the podcast, and you folks are sort of riding this wave as such. So how do you see the whole mix of policy tailwinds plus, startups playing a part in this?
Yeah, I think multiple things have happened, obviously. I think one important thing was people started realizing that with services, they were not able to create hundreds of millions of jobs. So especially the bottom of the pyramid, like even though people like you and me leapfrog to the services industry very
Correct.
quickly, the bottom of the pyramid was not able to make that leap.
And there's an over concentration on agriculture. And,
Absolutely. I mean, like, there's no reason for half of our population should still be in agriculture. There's not enough need of people there. So we need manufacturing for heavy, large scale employment to be created.
Right.
And I think second is manufacturing in general, because of all the capital that goes into it, the asset creation, the capacity creation that happens, is generally a much better way of building a nation. It's also more defensible. It's much easier to move, let's say, a software job from India to Ukraine.
Correct.
While it's extremely difficult to move a manufacturing plant from, let's say, China to India, because it comes with a whole lot of back-end supply chain that also gets created. And I think multiple things fell into the place quickly. One is software ideas started getting exhausted. And I think entrepreneurs like me, obviously, Zetwork, Off Business are probably the pioneers there. They started realizing a big opportunity in actually getting into heavy industries. And because they were boring, hard to deal with, tough on the ground kind of industries, not everybody wanted to get there. So they could just become big very quickly without too much competition.
Yeah,
I think that's one. Second, policy. I think government also realized that if the country has to go to the next level, then manufacturing has to happen. We can't have the bottom 700 million people of the country getting completely ignored or living on sustenance salary below poverty line, and then rest of us become millionaires. So just cannot happen. A lot of policy initiatives started happening, and yes, I think some of the tailwinds in the global economy came together to really obviously support startups like us. But I would say, the biggest success story, to be honest, according to me, is the Apple iPhone.
Yeah.
And I think that also gives confidence to entrepreneurs like us that, yes, we have lost a lot of time in India not being a manufacturing hub, but I think we're going in the right direction.
Yeah. There was some recent news that I think we're manufacturing some 5% of the Apple phone or something of that sort, right? And Vistron and plenty of these things are happening. So at this point, are you aggregating demand from, let's say, the US and Southeast Asia or elsewhere, Middle East maybe? And if so, what is resonating with these people, right? Because India is not really known so much as a manufacturing hub, right? Maybe for automobile parts or what specific things maybe. So what is resonating with these folks? And later on, I'll ask you about the India manufacturing story also. But could you talk a little bit about your demand aggregation at this point?
Sure. So even today, half of our demand comes from outside India.
Right.
So Middle East and US being the largest markets, we've slowly expanded into Europe as well with a few key customers. So we're pretty much present across the world. US obviously being the most important market for us, just because of the sheer size, as well as the challenges that the customers face, just being so many thousands of miles away from the supply destinations. Now, good thing with us is that India has always been known as a textile country.
Textile, yeah.
So I would not worry too much about, yes, over the past decade or so, we have lost that. Obviously China has been the biggest.
China, Vietnam.
But then Bangladesh, Vietnam have become bigger when it comes to apparels. But textile, India is still big. So textile, essentially the raw material, the fabrics and the cotton, we are still very big. In fact, most of the cotton that is used in Bangladesh comes from India. So India has always been at the forefront of the textile and apparel. Yes, apparel manufacturing has become more competitive in Bangladesh and Vietnam, but so have also we've also expanded to other geographies, especially Bangladesh.
Right.
So Bangladesh is almost close to a quarter or slightly more of our supply chain even today. So we are very well present in India and Bangladesh, but it has never been a difficult sell for us to go and say that India is not a destination, or we had to convince people that India is a big destination.
So we were able to streamline this whole thing more efficiently, basically.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Manufacturing itself has changed so much post-COVID, right? I mean,
Right.
we've seen that the entire supply chains have been reorganized, reshaped, and so on, and everyone is sort of thinking of a China plus one or a diversifying away from China and so on. And all of these must have helped you a great deal as well, right? So how have you seen manufacturing change post-COVID for you?
Multiple things, actually. I think, where do I start? So even before COVID, the number one thing that was happening was just in general deglobalization. Like we all keep talking about it. There's more nationalistic feelings across the world. It's not just India or US. And I think, so that is one. So people are anyways figuring out various destinations for their supply chains, or trying to figure out better supply chains which are closer home. In India, for example, we still see a big wave of customers themselves looking for stuff which are made in India.
Yeah.
Forget anti-China, but it's just beyond that. It's people want stuff which is made in India, which is comes from more nationalistic feeling than anything else. That's one. Second, which is especially due to COVID, people realized that their supply chains were too concentrated on one country. In case of apparel, it was China. Now people are also realizing some of them are heavily concentrated in Bangladesh. And because of some recent troubles with Bangladesh, their supply chains were getting disrupted. That was the second thing. And I think the third thing in general, I think, which I saw was because of COVID and because of one country getting locked down, they were in general trying to figure out more supply chains in different parts of the world. And to their surprise, they realized that there are interesting things happening in different countries as well. As an example, people never thought India could be a destination for polyester based clothes. And everybody used to think it is only China where they can get such clothes. But today, Surat is doing amazing work in polyester based fabrics and clothes, which people only really realized when they started looking for some alternative.
What are some of these hubs in India which are now gaining?
Surat, I would say, is the biggest one, I think.
Okay.
So cotton India was always known for, and hence Tirupur, Coimbatore, etc. were always big for that. But I think especially these China substitute for polyester was always a challenge. And I think because of that, Surat as a textile hub gained a lot. Ludhiana, because of its expertise in making more sportswear, more active wear,
right,
which became big after COVID, that they started gaining a lot. Jaipur is gaining a lot because of all these expertise in creating more woven wear, more sustainable wear, more handcrafted ones. Sustainability also became a big theme post-COVID.
Right.
So I think these are some of the hubs which are definitely gaining.